So we've just given a very quick refresher and a bit of an overview about the various elements that make up the red meat integrity system. Now we're going to get into some more detail around what you need to do specifically, and certainly to keep it really practical for you to be sale ready for this year's selling season. Just before we do kick off in terms of can you stand by what you sell and providing you with those practical tips, the way that we're structuring tonight's presentation includes looking at what you need to do across some of the core programs of ISC, including LPA and NLIS, so Livestock Production Assurance and the National Livestock Identification System, as well as the National Vendor Deck. Now, there's a range of tips for producers who might be relatively new to the integrity system, as well as those who might have been in the industry for a while now. So hopefully you'll all go away with something really helpful tonight. Now, there's actually around 180,000 accredited PICs in the Livestock Production Assurance Program, and being part of it means that you need to keep your online LPA account details up to date. You need to maintain your LPA accreditation, and this includes doing the online learning and assessment to understand LPA's requirements for livestock and property management, and renewing your accreditation every 3 years. Accreditation gives you more options for marketing your livestock and means that you can access LPA national vendor decks for all livestock movements between PICs. You also need to manage your livestock and property in line with the 7 LPA on-farm requirements. Maintain thorough records as evidence of livestock history and on-farm practices, and also be prepared to undergo an audit if requested. Now, we'll speak about parts A and B on the slide there in more detail tonight to ensure that you're sale ready. So for part A, LPA and your account and accreditation or re-accreditation. So firstly, you can access and update your account through the MyMLA platform. Now, this is the new gateway or process for accessing LPA. If you don't already have a MyMLA account, you will need to create one and link your LPA credentials to that. And we'll provide resources in a post-webinar email, which will show you how you can link your accounts. But there's a really great advantage there in linking your accounts because you'll only need to remember one username and password to access all your industry accounts. Now, for new and renewing producers, it's really important that you keep your knowledge up to date by using the LPA learning modules. Now, this learning tool gives you the information you need to complete your accreditation when it becomes due, and has lots of great tips and tools to ensure it is easy to incorporate the requirements of LPA into your everyday livestock operation and management. Now, LPA accredited producers, as I said, need to renew your accreditation by completing an assessment every 3 years. And if your accreditation lapses, you cannot access national vendor decks. You will be notified directly by ISC though when your accreditation is due 3 months prior to its expiry. So then when it does come time to renew your accreditation, all you need to do is review the learning modules that are provided, and that's allow about up to an hour, complete the assessment, allow about 15 minutes, agree to the LPA conditions, and then pay the $90 fee plus GST once every 3 years. You also need to make sure that your contact details are up to date so that you don't miss those reminder emails. And just to note there that sale yards will check to see if your LPA accreditation is up to date. And if your accreditation is not, your livestock will likely receive a lower price at sale because they'll have to be sold as non-LPA. And then any buyers will also have to wait 60 days for those livestock to become LPA accredited again. So, now, how to become LPA accredited. So for new LPA accounts, the LPA learning will need to be completed, as I said, but for re-accreditation, the welfare module must be recompleted to generate a new animal welfare certificate. However, ISC recommends that the learning modules should be completed to ensure the person responsible for the husbandry of the livestock is up to date with any changes that might have occurred within the standards and rules since the last assessment or accreditation period. It's also a good refresher so you can easily answer those assessment questions. Now, another thing there in terms of how to complete your LPA accreditation, you may notice that there is a warning when you actually log in to the LPA Service Centre about not being eligible for a digital discount when completing your accreditation. So this is a new process. So when your LPA accreditation becomes due, you now have the option to select whether or not you'll go digital with and therefore start using the ENVD. And by clicking access the ENVD and following the instructions, the digital discount will then become available to you as part of your accreditation. So part B there was about in terms of how to meet the 7 requirements of the Livestock Production Assurance Program. So LPA is all about managing your livestock and property according to these 7 requirements. And while participation in the program is essentially voluntary, producers who choose to become LPA accredited do commit to carrying out their practices on farm to support the integrity of the Australian red meat and also have access to LPA NVDs. Now, all of the requirements for managing your livestock and your property according to those 7 requirements, they're outlined on the ISC website and also in the LPA guidebook, and of course as part of the LPA learning, and it takes you through each of those requirements in detail before completing the assessment. And the 7 requirements listed there on the screen, it's about property risk assessment, it's around safe and responsible animal treatments, stock foods, fodder crops, grain and pasture treatments, preparation of dispatch of livestock transactions and movements, biosecurity and animal welfare. And that information links to that information will be provided in the post-webinar email. Now, here we've got some handy tips in terms of livestock production assurance to help ensure that you are sale ready. So it's always good, ensure that your record keeping is up to date so that you can properly complete your NVDs. Check all livestock you are planning to sell have a working NLIS device. Ensure livestock are fit to load. Make sure every NVD is clear, complete and correct, or use ENVD for a faster, easier way to complete your consignments. And then make sure that the movement has been recorded on the NLIS database. Let's get stuck into LPA national vendor decks and what do producers need to do. So firstly, you need to maintain your LPA accreditation to continue to access LPA national vendor declarations. Need to make a very important mental note that NVDs are a legal document and they are your declaration that you have met the requirements of the LPA program, that you've managed your livestock and your property in accordance with those 7 requirements. This declaration is then married to the livestock's lifetime traceability when the transfer is completed on the NLIS database. Now, on-farm assurance and traceability need to go hand in hand so that our customers can remain confident in our integrity system and in Australian red meat. When you tick boxes on the LPA NVD or you sign the NVD, you are declaring that your on-farm practices meet those LPA requirements and therefore our customer expectations. A tick on an NVD must be backed up by accurate farm records. This is your pledge that the meat from your farm has been produced safely, ethically, and meets biosecurity requirements. And it also means that you stand by what you sell. NVDs must be provided to the transporter when selling livestock, and you need to file your completed NVDs in case of an audit. And NLIS transfers are also part of LPA audits. Now, the biggest tip to stand by what you sell is to fill in every LPA NVD correctly. The aim is to make sure that every NVD is clear, complete and correct. Now, the questions in part A of the National Vendor Deck are often where producers need a bit of a hand. These questions are about the animal's history. This information is crucial for food safety and market access. So the key here is to stay on the safe side. If in doubt, tick yes and check your records to be sure. Now, that's apart from the question about livestock ownership. If you bred the livestock, tick yes. If you purchased one or more animals in the consignment, then you need to tick no and indicate the most recent date of purchase. Now, some other things to note, sometimes the consignee and the destination may be different and have different property identification codes. and it's important that you identify this on the LPA NBD. In the consigned to section, you must record the full name and address of the person and or company that the livestock are being consigned to. In some instances, the address given in the consigned to section may be different to the actual physical location that the livestock are being sent to. So a really good example there is when transporting livestock to be sold at a sale yard, the consignee is your livestock agent and the destination is the sale yard location. Other things, keep an eye on accidental exposure to restricted animal materials such as pet, sheep or goats accessing dog food or pigs accessing chook scraps and things like that. But ISC, we have lots of tips on filling in the NBD so it's clear, complete and correct, and we'll definitely share those with you in the post-webinar email. The final step for Part A in the National Vendor Deck is the declaration. When you tick the box on your LPA NVD and you sign the NVD, you're guaranteeing that your on-farm practices meet LPA requirements and ultimately our customer expectations. Your tick must be backed up by accurate farm records, and just a reminder that those farm records and your NVDs, should you be asked to go through an LPA audit, will be checked as well. So we quite often get asked, what are some of the top compliance issues that we see in terms of national vendor decks and when they're actually wrong or when they're not clear, complete and correct. So some examples here on the slide at the moment when we see handwritten NVDs where the handwriting is not legible or you can't read it. Where the NVDs are not completed, so questions might be missed, NVDs are not signed, NVDs have both yes and no ticked to the same question instead of either one or the other. Another example is where the NVD form has been photocopied from either a hard copy book or a sample NVD downloaded from the internet. And then another classic, use of whiteout to correct a mistake on the form or crossing out a serial number, things like that. So if mistakes are made, you need to start the form again. Now, we've talked a little bit tonight. We also have access, or you can complete your national vendor declarations using the ENVD. Now, the ENVD is not just a national vendor deck. It's a system for completing all consignment paperwork digitally, including livestock assurance and health declarations. Now, there are several benefits for using the ENVD, and they include answering questions only the once, the ability to copy information to multiple forms, such as NFAS or the MSA forms, you can use templates to save even more time. The ENVD is mobile friendly. It's optimized for mobiles and will continue to improve. And it is securely stored and always available. You won't need to wait on the paper books. You're always using the current version and you won't have to worry about finding your handwritten records. The ENVD simplifies LPA audits. It will all be in one place and easy for the auditor to find. And the ENVD can also be printed at any time as part of filling it in. So whenever you hit submit, that form will be available for you to use. Now, in addition, users of the ENVD will receive a $30 discount on their LPA accreditation or re-accreditation fees if they choose to go digital with ENVDs and then use the ENVD system to complete all their consignment paperwork. Now, a couple of handy tips here for how to complete an ENVD. You can access the new ENVD system by logging in using the direct link there on the screen. So by logging in directly, to the LPA Service Centre. And we will provide that link in the post-webinar email, or you can simply log into your LPA account via MyMLA. Now, I did just want to show you very quickly, for those of you that aren't familiar with using the ENVD, a couple of screenshots and some examples of how to go about creating a consignment and some of the language that you'll start to see within the ENVD platform. So if you want to go and create a new consignment or a new NVD using the ENVD, you simply click the button there that says create new consignment, and then you can complete an NVD from scratch. or alternatively, you can complete an NVD using a template. Now, templates, I can't highlight templates enough actually. So if you're selling stock to using the same agent, for example, selling them to the same sale yard or the same processing plant, quite often you can create that ENVD and then save it as a template. So then next time you'll have a lot of those details already saved within that template, and you're just adding the individual consignment details. So that'll save you a lot of time. And that's also particularly relevant to if we've got any seed stock or stud producers on the call tonight. So lots and lots of stud sales will be starting to kick off in the coming months. You can create templates and you can have a lot of details saved within your ENVD several days before the sale, for example. The next part to the ENVD is around entering the movement information details. So this is where you enter the information about where the livestock are moving from and to, and what date they are being moved. Now, as I just said with templates, for example, it's quite handy, but the movement date can be up to 28 days into the future. So you can certainly plan upcoming consignments or movements well in advance. The next part of the ENVD is around selecting the species and the livestock forms you require. So as I said before, it's not just a platform for producing a national vendor deck. You can select a number of other forms, including your MSA declarations, your health declarations, as well as the national vendor deck. Now, the consignment must contain at least an LPA national vendor deck or NVD. The other forms, however, are optional. Now, the other forms visible to you are based on your program accreditation, but if a form is not appearing which should be there, you may need to check your accreditation for that particular program, such as the MSA. Now, once these details have been entered and you've chosen the type of consignment that you are completing, you can print 3 copies and you can complete the rest at the yards if you like, but you must retain the fully completed paper copy for your records. If you choose to complete the whole ENVD online, you simply step through the livestock history, food safety, chemical treatment sections as per the hard copy NVD, and then complete from there. And the final stage of the ENVD is around completing the declaration and submitting. Now, you only need to sign the form once, and the signature is applied to all the forms which have been filled out in the consignment automatically. Just to note that when you sign the ENVD, that you're declaring that your livestock are meeting those LPA requirements, same as if you're using a hard copy NVD. And after submitting and essentially printing, you can make changes to certain sections to the ENVD up to 2 days after the movement date has been entered. So for the National Livestock Identification System, what do you need to do as a producer? You need to keep your online NLIS account details up to date. You need to order and use NLIS tags or devices as identifiers for every animal on your pick. You need to record movements of livestock in the NLIS database. Now, as I said, livestock transfers between picks must be recorded by transferring the tags in the database, and the person receiving the livestock is responsible for completing the transfer. The timeframes for property to property transfers vary in terms of when it needs to be done. So it's important that you check what's required for your particular state, and that all producers need to regularly check their own records against the database to ensure that those transfers have been completed. And that's really important if you're relying on someone else to make the transfer. You just need to check that that's actually happened. It's also recommended that you do a pick reconciliation every year to ensure that the NLIS database is an accurate record of devices and livestock on your property. To ensure lifetime livestock traceability, the NLIS database will also issue automated email when differences occur. So when animals might go that they've had a tag lost or a tag that wasn't registered on your pick, it's really important that if you receive those emails that you do investigate those and notify the database of the result of those discrepancies. As I said, you must record all livestock movements onto your PIC on the NLIS database to remain LPA accredited. Now, failure to complete NLIS transfers will be recorded as a non-conformance by an auditor if you are audited, and may lead to suspension of your accreditation and therefore removing access to the National Vendor Declaration. If livestock are bought, sold or moved through a sale yard, the livestock movement must be recorded by the sale yard. For private sales, so sales and movements that do not take place via a sale yard, the buyer receiver of the livestock must record the livestock movement. And the vendor or sender of the livestock is not obliged to record the movement off the property, although they might do so. But as I said, and the other instance there is that abattoirs must also record movements for all directly consigned livestock. However, as I said before, it is the responsibility of the receiver or the purchaser to make sure that that's done. And even if you're relying on a sale yard to do that, it's also good practice just to double check that that's happened. And as I said before, completing that PIC reconciliation annually is recommended for all LPA accredited producers. And of course, all livestock consignments on the NLIS database must be accompanied by a form of movement documentation. Now, I've got a little integrity insight there that state legislation also requires that the buyer or receiver completes the transfer, and penalties may be imposed by the state and territory government for failing to complete those transfers as well. So we've got a bit of an integrity insight there, or some tips for actually if you are sort of checking the database or transfers and PIC reconciliations, or if you need help navigating around the NLIS database. We've got a whole heap of tech tips, and we're also in the process of turning those into a series of how-to guides. So stay tuned for those. But at the moment, you can certainly access a suite of tech tips on the ISC website, and we'll provide a link to that in the post-webinar email. But a little integrity insight there, check the NLIS database whenever transfers have been completed to ensure that the numbers are correct as well. It can save you a lot of time rather than correcting mistakes later on. Another integrity insight is around an early warning status as part of the national, the NLIS. So an early warning is a status within the NLIS database that's automatically assigned to a property carrying high-risk animals. While it doesn't identify specific animals, it does help monitor and manage biosecurity risks for your farm and food safety along the supply chain. And statuses are listed on the NLIS database. So there's more information around an early warning status for producers and also sale yards and agents available on the ISC website.